Well, from boom to bust, local real estate company Epic Alliance has collapsed. Gone are millions of dollars. Investors left holding the bag. Now there's an investigation. Many details still coming out. Could charges be laid? And what does it mean for those in real estate? Conrad Neufeld is an award-winning mortgage broker in Saskatoon, and he joins us right now. Mr. Neufeld, I want to thank you so much for taking some time for us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, briefly, you've been following this closely. What exactly happened here?
Well, from a 3,000-foot view, I think that you had two women who started out with some really, really good intentions. I do believe that, despite how they might be being painted. But I think they took what was relatively a good idea and eventually lost control of it, couldn't handle the growth, and ended up collapsing in a big way.
So you said that from the start you felt something was a little not right about what was going on here. What did you think it was and why?
Well, because they ran a few different programs, right? So on their fund to flip program, I think that one had the best chance of success, only because, they could buy a house and put in some extra money, some sweat equity, and come up with an asset that was better. I think that one worked out relatively well in the earlier years. But if you look at their hassle-free program, a lot of the numbers, at least if you took it from strictly an investment perspective, didn't seem to add up even right from the start. Even when some of the investments that we were looking at, in 2015, 2016, I just was confused how they made money.
So, there are allegedly potentially hundreds of homes that have been suddenly dumped on investors who had invested in these homes, hoping that they would, it'd be a hassle-free situation. They would invest in the homes, the company would manage them. The company's gone now. Could this actually impact the real estate market in Saskatoon, considering how many homes there are? And if these homes are not as worth as much as people thought, could that impact the market as a whole?
Yes and no. In a way, it already has impacted the market, right? Because if you look at appraisals and how they work, oftentimes they use comparables when trying to generate their report for their appraisals, right? And in a lot of those appraisals, Epic Alliance were used as comparables. So in a lot of ways, it kind of already did influence the market because they're using these higher evaluations in their comparables when generating the reports for non-Epic Alliance reports. So there's already kind of some influence on the market there. Other ways it impacts the markets is because obviously, when you have something go as big and go as bust as this one did, you're going to have a lot of investors that might become skittish, right? And not so eager to enter the real estate market, because, they don't want to lose their money, which makes sense. As far as ongoing effects, though, I can't see it don't expect some big crash. There's not all these properties aren't going to flood the market. There's not going to be some big, massive or epic collapse as far as real estate prices are concerned. I think for the most part, most of the assets are going to eventually find their way. You're going to have a lot of people, a lot of these investors have to come in because most of these investors aren't going to want to sell at a loss, right? So they're going to hold on to these assets, try to hold on to them, try to make them worth something, but it's going to take some work to get there.
Well, speaking of taking some work, and we obviously don't know the legalities of this. We leave that up to the authorities. There is an investigation, whether it be police or the Financial Consumer Affairs Authority. But in general, when investing in real estate, whether you're trying to buy a home or flip it, or whether you're trying to buy a home and rent it out, it's not always a win. There's sort of this thought out there that if you invest in real estate, you can't lose. But tell us about that, because you don't always make money.
Yeah, well, and I think that's the thing that differs it from a lot of the traditional stock investing that a lot of people do. Stock investing, you put your money in and maybe you could lose it all. And that would be tragic, but you lose all the money. Real estate works a little bit differently in the sense that, yeah, you could lose all your money, but you could lose more than all of the money that you invested, right? Because properties could need repairs and maintenance and ongoing money to keep the thing afloat. Or you could buy an asset that maybe isn't worth what you thought it was. And when you sell, you owe the bank or whatever, you could be underwater on your mortgage. So there's ways that you might actually need more money than the initial output that you put in to that product you could, in other words, end up losing more money than you put in. And I think that's probably what's going to happen to a good chunk of these investors.
So what should people look out for if they are looking at investing in a rental property, whether they're approached by somebody or whether they're just on their own looking at various properties that they might want to invest in to rent out? What are a number of things that they could look out for to make sure that they're making a sound investment?
I think there is two things. One, don't skip out on your own due diligence. I think that was a big factor here. I think there was a lot of people who went off the due diligence of others, or everybody assumed that everybody else was doing the due diligence. So make sure you always do your own due diligence. That's important. And to that point, never rely on someone else's due diligence, especially if it's the person selling you the product. I know there was a lot of times when Epic Alliance would already have the appraisal done, and they would go to these investors and be like, hey, pick one of these properties to join our hassle-free program, and we have appraisals done on all of them. You should always go and get your own independent appraisal for obvious reasons. And then two, never look at real estate as passive investments, because they're not. Real estate is a ton of friggin' work. You don't just buy an asset, sit back. And I think Epic Alliance did a lot of good work as packaging themselves as someone who's going to take care of all of the problems and take care of all of the hassle. Real estate doesn't really work that way. If you're going to go into real estate, expect that at some point you're going to have a lot of work or a lot of money required to keep that asset or time and attention to keep that asset going. And I think people are learning that, particularly those that were involved in Epic Alliance are learning that the hard way now, because here they thought they were buying these properties that were going to be perpetually managed by somebody else, and now they own them.
So, I mean, obviously some things to keep in mind. Is there anything else that you wish to add?
I think the main thing that I want to focus on as far as wanting to add is whenever you invest in a property, make sure you know the numbers and run by your own team the numbers, and make sure you understand the neighborhood that you're investing in. Because I think in a lot of cases, a lot of the investors that were involved here either didn't know the neighborhood or didn't know the numbers. And I think had they solved either one of those parts, most of the investors wouldn't have gotten involved in the first place.